branded. You know, popular demand suggested I be shirtless for this stream. But,
All right, so
decided
we
not to do
are
that.
officially live.
Did they hear that part?
I promise not to swear this time.
Yeah, that would be really appreciated.
Professionalism.
I don't.
All right, here we go.
God's darn
Put
it.
your shirt back on, Ruben.
Here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics. Proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day. Now, I am Evan Irwin, and we begin as we do each and every week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Hey, everybody.
Ruben Bressler.
How's it going? Welcome to another edition of Ruben Broadcasts from a Different Room.
Where in the world is Ruben Bressler?
This week I'm in the biggest little city in the world, Reno, Nevada.
Oh, good.
For Run It Up Reno. I'm branded here with the shirt and the emotes on the hat. So if you're in Reno, come on out and say hi.
I will be in Reno next year. Because that's what
if you're a Patreon subscriber,
cool.
You're going to have to listen to the pre-show where Ruben describes each and every button, and it is hilarious.
I describe all the emotes, yeah.
All what they mean, what they
We
sort
don't
of
have
mean.
any emotes because we only broadcast once a week. If we streamed like 3 times a week, we could get partnered with Twitch, and then we could have, hashtag Magic Mike's Bacon on Cheeseburger and things like that.
Fair enough. So here we are. And we're going to do things a little bit differently this week. We've been doing some giveaways. Thanks to CoolStuffInc.com, we're able to give away stuff. And so let me explain the first giveaway. For all of our Patreon supporters, if any of our Patreon supporters have an address in their account, I have bagged up, I have taken, I have delivered all of the water bottles and magnets and stickers, and we're sending those out, and those are on their way, and you'll get them soon, and it will be super awesome. And it took me a little while longer than I wanted it to, but we got there. We made it happen. Secondly, let's give away some cool stuff. Now, we've been giving away some stuff. Cool stuff. We've been giving away stuff that happens sort of later this week. We've been doing it for a couple days, which is fine. Yep. However, because I'm kind of having to administrate this kind of a pain in the butt, and people aren't always getting back to me, and it's kind of, it's weird having to chase people down to give them things. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this live on the air. I'm going to post a link right now so you guys can see what we're giving away this week. We are giving away a copy of Hazoret the Fervent, but we're not just giving away a copy of the Mythic. No. Now see,
we're giving away the Invocation. Why are we giving away that, Evan?
I'm going to bring that on the. I was going to put it up on the slide, but apparently I overwrote it because I'm good at this. Now, it turns out that Hazoret the Fervent, the Invocation version, has all these crazy symbols. You can't really read it. I have really that has not grown on me at all. By the way,
Sanskrit,
like actual
text.
Zero. And what sucks is that we're in for it for Hour of Devastation. These things are already done.
Yeah,
we got more that's coming anyway. So Hazoret the Fervent just so happens to look like Hazoret the Pervert on the Invocation version, and it's so good. It was one of my most
Herbert the Pervert.
One of my most retweeted, favorited, replied things ever on Twitter that I've ever done.
Oh my god!
Was when I noted.
Yeah, it had a ludicrous number of retweets. Like you said that, and I was like, okay, Evan, sure. And then it's actually like 500. It's like some ludicrous number.
It is a very high amount. However, you guys can go to that link. You can enter in all the different ways you enter and stuff. We want to give a copy of that away. Of course, we'll have to wait until release day for us to send it to you, but I can get it here. I can get you guys ready. I can get the addresses. I can get it prepped, and on release day, it will come to you. So that is Hazoret the Fervent that we were giving away as the Invocation.
I can't unsee it now.
Once you see it,
it's 415 favorites.
It is pretty spectacular. However, we have lots and lots of Amonkhet spoilers. So guys, tell me what you think about Amonkhet at this point. Just sort of first initial reactions to our official spoiler week.
Aaron, this is your wheelhouse. I'm going to let you go first.
Things are dying. Things are coming back.
Things are dying and coming back to life. I'm going to step back for a second.
Wheelhouse, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, look at all the red spells, Ruben. There's lots of burn spells and fast creatures. Like mono red could be coming back.
There's plenty here for me.
Yeah.
Don't worry about me. But this is all. This is AaronCampbell.set so far.
Wow.
I really like what I'm seeing so far. I love the flavor. You know, there are a lot of flavor wins here. There are a lot of callbacks to Egyptian mythology, Egyptian lore. There are a lot of things that they have gotten correctly. If you're following our friend Rujedit on Twitter, she's been doing a really good job critiquing this. That she's an actual Egyptologist, so she knows what she's talking about. And you know, she's been very good about talking about what it is that they've gotten right, and not just the obvious things, but like very minute details as well. You know, I love the embalm, obviously. I loved my spoiler very much. I'm a little cautious though. I worry we're kind of hitting critical mass, you know, where like everything is so flavorful, and I worry, you know, kind of like those Gushers fruit snacks where it just gets so juiced and juiced and juiced and it just explodes. And I'm just worried that like
I worry that my spoiler season is like candy. I don't know why.
It's so juiced. I just worry that it's just going to overload. And so I love what I'm seeing, but I'm just like, okay, I get it. Oh no. And so I just worry we're about to explode. But I love the scarabs, especially. I love the scarabs, you know, even though they don't actually burrow into your skin in real life. I think that it's cool that they do in here. And I love the names. I love the art, especially. I'm probably going to pre-release this, and I don't often pre-release, but I will do it for this set.
So we'll begin here with some of their new mechanics. Now, I think Wizards was kind of expecting people to like freak out and lose their minds because of all the aftermath cards with your weird like kind of half a card and a weird quarter 90-degree card. You know, at this point, I don't know if we could actually be surprised by some of this stuff anymore. It's like part of it's upside down and the other half just has squiggly lines and the words are backwards. Like, who cares? So
I have to ask though. This was a big conversation topic on Twitter because of the positioning of those cards. I'm going to ask you to this, maybe even people in chat. Where do you put your graveyard?
Ooh,
where do you
that's
put
interesting.
your graveyard?
Yeah.
Under my deck on the left-hand side of my playmat? Or is that where we're
Okay,
going?
so the left-hand side.
I draw, right, so the way that I hold my hand is like this, and I draw with my left, and so I have it perpendicular. It's not straight up and down. And then I have my graveyard in one clean line straight down from the side of my graveyard. However, with Aftermath cards, you can tilt your cards another 90 degrees, so you're 180 opposite of just stick with me, all right? I'm getting super nerd here, but you can line up your Aftermath cards in such a way that you can see the half of a card in your graveyard.
I think it's cool that you can have sort of them be portrait, and you can turn the Aftermath sideways. So let's take a look at some of them here. The Aftermath cards we have on the screen, and I'll do it the way that Wizards wants it to be, which is X to Y. So cut to ribbons. It's going to be weird to ribbon somebody. I'm just saying.
To shreds, you say.
Exactly. Destined to lead, insult to injury, mouth to feed. I think that's
mouth to feed.
That's Aaron's favorite.
Is quality.
It makes a hippo token. It makes a hippo token.
It does make a hippo token.
It's been. Have we ever made hippo tokens? I can't remember.
I don't think so.
I'm not sure. So let's go back here a little bit. So first of all, 3 of these are rare that we just talked about. Let's talk about the non-rare one, the one that essentially is okay for limited play because the other ones are kind of bananas in some way or another. Destined is a black and a generic mana for an uncommon instant. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn. So this is what Wizards has done to kind of replace regeneration. Lead is a sorcery. It's a green and 3 generic mana and has, of course, Aftermath. Lets you cast from your graveyard and exile it. All creatures able to block target creature this turn do so. So, you know, that's fine. You know, lure, whatever. Okay. So, but let's talk about cut to ribbons here for a second. So, when I imagine the color combinations of Magic and what Wizards wants to do with them, they want to say, you know, blue and white are supposed to do this, you know, in the environment they've sort of crafted. You know, green and red are going to do this. Black and red are going to do this. Cut is a red and generic mana rare sorcery that deals 4 damage to target creature, so Flame Slash, essentially.
Yep.
Ribbons is a black X generic mana sorcery, has Aftermath. Each opponent loses X life. So for the remainder of the game, if they put their shields down, you ribbons them. If you need to sort of, you know, bait counterspell, so you want to play a threat, you ribbons them for some amount. So that's a really interesting way, I think, to say this is how red-black decks can work, could work, and we'll talk in a minute here about. So there's a black-blue one that's really interesting. But regardless, what do you guys think about these split cards at this point?
I think they're super cool. I think that anything that has this is essentially glorified flashback, but instead of having the spell be the same spell both times you cast it, now it's a spell from your hand and then a different spell from your graveyard. So we were talking earlier about Mouth to Feed. 2 colorless and a green make a 3/3 with 3 colorless and a green flashback. That's Call of the Herd. That already exists. It's just that the back half of Mouth to Feed is now drawing some extra cards instead of making another 3/3. So very similar style of card there, and still probably going to be quite good. Just like most of the flashback cards, they're going to be dependent on the value that you can get out of them. This is why Lingering Souls was such a big deal. Was not only was it a 2-for-1 on one half, but it was a 2-for-1 on both halves. And so if you were able to get value out of like preparations and draft, being able to basically create your own overrun, I think that these are a little bit different in that you really only need one half, the first half, to be playable, and then the second half is whatever, right? So for example, Cut to Ribbons, people are going to just play Cut in their control decks. You can just play Mizium Mortars without Kicker or Overload. And then just have Ribbons in your graveyard, and it actually affords you some leeway in your deck building, in that you don't necessarily need to put win conditions in your deck if you have 3 or 4 copies of Ribbons in your graveyard after turn 25 or whatever. So I think that what they did with this is really cool. The naming convention of word to word, in addition to giving us the best Magic memes in a long time. For example, X gonna give it, and then as the back half was one that I saw.
I put one that's not family friendly in our private chat.
No. There's a lot that aren't exactly family friendly.
But I would say the ones that kind of ride the line is kick / the nuts. I thought that was funny because kick and then 2, So, yeah. But let's take.
I like one fish / fish, red fish, blue fish.
Oh man,
which was a good pun. But yeah, I think that it's a cool idea, but I feel like that this is another of this weird graphic design thing that happened where everybody was just like, yeah, let's see what happens when we just let the graphic designers go nuts. Not that I hate them as much as we've talked about the Invocations, but it is just an interesting, and I'm glad they're taking these chances. And this one I actually think has panned out because I actually really like the way these look now that I'm used to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was that kind of shock of, because I played back in Kamigawa many years ago now, and that had the flip cards where like there was art and there was like this diagonal line lightning thing, and then there was the other side of the art that was upside down. And I don't think that this is anywhere near as bad as the Invocations. Like, this is basically just the split cards back from Invasion, and they shortened the card frame. Okay. I'm in no way upset about that. However, I wanted to focus just for a moment on Insult to Injury. Insult is a red and 2 generic mana for a rare red sorcery. Damage can't be prevented this turn, and if a source you control would deal damage this turn, it deals double that damage instead. That's 3 mana, that's your entire team, that's everything that deals damage. That's a source. That means if you play spells after it, it deals more, including Injury, red and 2 generic mana for a sorcery that has Aftermath, and Injury deals 2 damage to target creature and 2 damage to target player. And of course, if you got 6 mana, you're able to play both and deal 4 to something and 4 to them. That's, I think, a little bit unrealistic, but what this is doing is A, giving red some real firepower to hit in the early to mid game, and B, giving it reach later in the game to actually be able to use this spell to just shock something. Shock them, shock something that's in their way, put the last few points on something. I thought this card was really interesting and maybe very strong.
Yeah, I think that there are a number of, well, first of all, there's a number of ways, as Hazmat the Pervert shows, that you want to get rid of cards in your hand. Mm-hmm. And so you can very easily discard Insult to Injury and just cast the Injury half, which is a very good effect all on its lonesome. Let alone, 4 colorless red, do both of them. For some big red style, aggro decks that include, dragons and stuff like that. I think Insult to Injury is great.
Hazmat also plays well. A friend of mine pointed this out. She plays really well with a lot of the madness cards.
Yes.
If you're discarding things like Incorrigible Youth, you've got that. You've got Fiery Temper. I really like the synergy between this block and the previous one, which is something I didn't think of when these cards were being spoiled. I look forward. I'm terrified, but I also look forward to see what people can do with this, because we really haven't had a burn deck in Standard for a while. You know, we have an aggressive deck in Mardu Vehicles. We've had some white weenie. We had green-white tokens, but you know, we haven't had a red safety valve, you know, majority red deck in quite a while. And you know, we talked kind of in the pre-show about how sometimes all a deck needs is just one card, maybe two cards to get it off the ground. And I really see some pieces here that, you know, could make us a really scary red deck.
I also like the idea of a red-green deck for this thing.
Sure.
It says a source. It doesn't say a red source.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you get some big, beefy red and green creatures out there, of which there are a lot in this set, and I'm sure we'll talk about a couple more. But we're making fun of the name a lot, but Hazoret is no joke. Like,
no.
Even if it can't attack or block, 2 colorless and a red, discard outlet, deal damage to your opponents as just like an uncounterable thing. That is a real thing.
Yeah.
That is a real good ability, let alone if it's a 5/4 haste with indestructible. So yeah, that thing's a really, really good card. I'm going to be casting a lot of Hazoret.
So,
I think.
So let's talk about Hazoret. We've clearly already made fun of it, and the only image I have right now, sorry guys, is the Invocation version. It's okay, we can't read it either. But anyway, it's a red and 3
Jackal
generic,
God.
Yeah, it's a Jackal God. It's a red and 3 generic mana for a 5/4 indestructible haste, but it cannot attack or block unless you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. And it has an activated ability of red and 2 generic mana, discard a card, Hazoret deals 2 damage to each opponent. And that's each opponent for those people who like to play Commander, which is awesome. And of course,
Two-Headed Giant.
And of course, it helps turn itself on, as it were. And so Hazoret
I hadn't thought about Two-Headed Giant. That's pretty good.
Yeah, which is really cool. So Hazoret is very, very powerful, as much as we can make fun of it. I really like the idea that this is one of the kind of the top end for your red deck is this type of card.
Yeah, I think that this is. I just am in love with this card, desperately and madly in love with this card. Also, just in case ever, Prototype still going to be in Standard. 2 mana 5/5 that can't attack or block unless a player has no cards in hand. Just saying, you know, maybe that'll be a.
I lost to a deck like that in the Standard Showdown. There was a Standard Showdown during Eldritch Moon I went to, and there was a young man playing Black-Red Vampires with that card and Key to the City, and it was nasty. Like, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like the flavor of the. We've only seen 2 of the gods so far, Kefnet and Hazoret. But the way that they've sort of, and I think Mark Rosewater wrote a little bit about this on the Mothership, that the way that you get devotion to the Egyptian gods as opposed to the way that you get devotion to the Theros gods is very unique and super interesting, and I really like that a lot.
I'm not sure I like it though. Like, I think really? one of the neat things about the Theros style of devotion is that they weren't creatures until that requirement. Worlds are hard. Words
are also hard.
I need
worlds are hard.
I need one of those movie clickers, like Take Two. But no, you know, the thing about this though is, so you know, when Hazmat hits the battlefield, you know, she is still a creature, and let's say she's the only creature that you have, and you happen to play that black Cartouche. You have to sacrifice her. Whereas before it was like if you had a Thassa, but you didn't necessarily have the blue, she was immune to like Edict. She was immune to like Banisher Priest type effects. And these creatures unfortunately are not. They're indestructible, which is great. But you know, there are ways around that you wouldn't normally have to worry about if you didn't have the devotion for them. So that's a little pesky, but
sure. I mean, ultimately I think it's cleaner, and I think it's a better way to do the gods than they did. I think it was
significantly less complicated for new players, for these guys to be and gals to be creatures the whole time, because if you play a Keranos against somebody and then they just look down at all of their creature removal, sacrifice effects, bounce effects, and they're a new player, and you're just like, nope, Keranos you every turn. That's going to really turn people off the game. It's not intuitive. They've been really making an effort to have non-intuitive rules be a thing of the past, which we'll get to another thing about non-intuitive rules later being changed later on in the show. But I think that this is a good change for simplicity's sake. Obviously, it makes me sad that I don't get to be so smart when playing against other people, but I really like what they've done.
Speaking of Keranos, did you know that you can reanimate a Keranos and it gets past Containment Priest?
See, that's what I'm talking about.
I'm talking about.
Smarter than people, but that makes no sense. That is going to make people quit Magic. Is that exact situation? It is glorious. However,
it's ridiculous.
It is going to make people want to quit the game.
It's one of those that if you're embarrassed to explain it, it's probably wrong. Right. So Aftermath, I want to touch a little bit for a few seconds on some more of those because, again, this is a brand new card type, really weird, really interesting, super cool, one of the biggest sort of mechanics in the set. Dusk to Dawn was officially spoiled today by Noah Bradley, who did the artwork. He did a really cool video on it, and it's basically a really sweet Wrath of God. 2 white, 2 generic mana, rare sorcery, destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater. And Dawn is 2 white, 3 generic mana for, of course, a sorcery that has Aftermath. Return all creature cards with power 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. That doesn't have a limit. That is every power 2 or less, not just power of 2. All the creatures that reach that criteria come back to you. Dusk destroys a ton of problems in the format. It's way better than Fumigate, and that's really awesome because Wizards has pushed and pushed and pushed, and now destroying power of 3 or greater by default, I think, is a big deal.
Yeah. First of all, Robert Rodriguez, Quentin Tarantino from Dusk Till Dawn. If you haven't seen it, you definitely should.
One of my favorite movies of all time.
I love it.
It's amazing.
I'm going to try not to spoil it. It's 2 of my favorite movies of all time. The first half and the second half.
Right. I honestly, the first half I am a ridiculously huge fan of. It's just one of my favorite movie segments. Just like Full Metal Jacket. Full Metal Jacket
same thing.
It's two movies. But the first movie is insane. And that to me, I feel the same way about Dusk to Dawn. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. In any case, you guys remember the what was it? Summon the Ancestors, Release the Ancestors deck that was a thing in Standard?
Rally the Ancestors.
Rally the Ancestors. That's the one. Yeah. This is that, but better. This is that with a Wrath attached to it, right? This is you getting to play all of your random value 2/2s and 2/1s and Mogus Marauders and Jaces and Nentuko Husks, and then getting to Wrath your opponent's Hippo tokens, and then a turn later getting to combo off with the card being in your graveyard.
Wow,
this card's ridiculous, right? In I don't know if that's a real thing in Modern.
I mean, Rally was an instant.
That's the first thing that I thought of.
It could work in Frontier. Frontier already has Rally, so it could be like Rally 5 and 6.
I mean, there might be something here. I mean, if Rally wants a Wrath, this is a main deckable Wrath in any style of Rally deck. Sure. We don't know what kind of combo creatures there are out there that could take advantage of this. But, from Dusk Till Dawn, first of all, it's a 4-mana Wrath, which we haven't seen in a while. So if you get your 2-mana Accelerant, which there are a couple of in Standard, then you can clear the opposing board of, Warpath Ghouls and Flash Jaguars that are coming out and whatever else it hasn't been printed out yet. And then a turn later, get back all of your Courser of Krufix style creatures. This card is just great.
Well, the problem is ultimately, Rally is, first of all, an instant, and second of all, puts them on the battlefield, not your hand. So
not back in your hand. Okay,
so you got to cast them all.
It's more of a value card.
That's fine. And speaking of value, I wanted to point out Prepare to Fight. Now, this is a multicolor Aftermath card, which I think is really cool. We'll talk about it here in a minute. But it is a rare, essentially, combat trick. It is Prepare is 1 white, 1 generic mana for a rare instant. You untap target creature, it gets +2/+2 and gains lifelink until end of turn. So that card right there is basically going to kill something of your opponents. They're going to run into it. It's rare, first of all, and they're not going to see it coming, and it's going to gain you life. That's a huge swing. And on the other side of it, under Fight, is literally the fight mechanic, a green and 3 generic mana sorcery with Aftermath. Target creature you control fights target creature your opponent controls. So at least that sounds cool. I want to cast Fight on your whatever. But it's really interesting to me that I saw a lot of people going like, I don't understand why this is rare. And I'm like, do you want to see this multiple times a draft? Really?
Heavens, that is,
No.
That card is
this. based on the few that we've seen, there's going to be, I'm thinking, 10 monocolored split cards, 5 rare, 5 uncommon, right? And then 10 multicolored, the rare cycle of which is going to be allied, and the enemy cycle of which is enemy. Am I getting that right? Does anything not follow that?
I'm not sure. But let's
follow that theme.
Well, the next card I wanted to talk about, and this actually comes up because on Twitter, oh my God, Conley Woods was talking about how he thought this was a really poor design. Rags to Riches. Rags is a 2 black, 2 generic rare sorcery. All creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn, so it's kind of a mini Wrath for black. And Riches is 2 blue, 5 generic mana for a blue sorcery with Aftermath. Each opponent chooses a creature they control, and you gain control of those creatures. Now, what he was explaining was that he feels like this is bad design because if I have a 1/1 and a 10/10, this card is going to destroy whatever it is I'm trying to do. And that's a problem. Having a control magic literally just hanging out in your opponent's graveyard is kind of a problem. If your opponent is able to answer your creatures, sweep the board, dusk your board, whatever it is that they're doing, and there's a Riches just hanging out, you don't really want to cast your best creatures anymore, and there's not a lot of hexproof/shroud going around. So sticking something that kills all the weenies and then putting on it something that's going to take their biggest thing that didn't die thanks to that first spell, basically it's a weird kind of scenario to set up. It's kind of a play pattern that over and over again, eventually you're not going to be able to play as many sort of weenie decks against these types of strategies because they just kind of have this control magic waiting for the best thing that you're about to do.
Now, to be fair, Rags is pretty bad. I mean, 4 mana for an Infest is pretty poor.
It's pretty poor.
And 7 is a lot. I mean, I get that it's not...
It's graveyard whenever you feel like it, right?
Sure. And it is a permanent effect. The fact that it isn't an aura is a huge deal.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Aaron, how you feel about it?
When I first looked at the card, I was a little disappointed by it. Like, I just didn't get it. But the scenario that you illustrated, I actually kind of have a new appreciation for it, where I'm kind of like, okay, I get it now. I get why somebody would want this. I get wanting to kill the board and create almost this, not a lock necessarily, but just this hurdle that the opponent has to get over if they want to do something, if they want to, giving them that decision of, well, you may have to cast a crappy creature just to sort of like bait me, if you will, before you cast a really good creature. And I think it adds it creates a different kind of decision tree than people are used to, and maybe people are used to using. And I kind of like it now that you mention it, but I didn't even think of using it the way that you suggested.
Sure. And thanks to chat, it really doesn't matter if it has Shroud or Hexproof anyway, because your opponent chooses a creature they control.
Oh, that's so good.
Target. So it does not target, so they're going to get it if you got it. That to me is interesting. So let's move on to some more cards. First of all, bicycles. Okay, so there's a
ride my bicycle.
Woo woo. So the
you
bicycles.
Get higher than that.
Bicycles are
I
here.
tried my best.
And
bicycles are here.
They are dual lands with both land types. That's a big deal. That cycle for 2 generic mana. So, for example, we have Canyon Slough. Now, let's not get this wrong, Magic players. It's Canyon Slough. S-L-O-U-G-H is Slough.
Now, Evan, you really shouldn't slew shame people.
Wow. We're slew shaming.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
That's very good. It is a rare. It's a rare swamp mountain that taps to add black or red. Of course, it enters the battlefield tapped. However, it does have cycling. So people are really excited about this dual land cycle. Aaron, how do you feel about it?
So Life from the Loam has spiked to a $35 card now. in hype for Modern. So if you missed your window to get Life from the Loams, I'm really sorry, because they are they're probably the most expensive piece in a modern dredge list right now. Like that's what it's come to. And there's a lot of hype around Assault Loam decks doing anything with life from the loam. I believe Gitrog Monsters stock went up a little bit too with the release of these lands, because you can do shenanigans with that, and I'm completely here for it. I've talked about cycling being a thing for Living End, and Living End getting some new toys. I don't know if these would necessarily make the cut, although you can fetch them with some of the forest cyclers and things like that Living End uses. And I don't know if Modern Dredge necessarily is going to want them, but we're certainly open to try. But I think these are great, and I think, like you said, the fact that they have the land types attached to them really does change the game. But it's just great to see what the speculators are taking from this, and just watching the stocks kind of go up. I think that's fascinating.
Ruben?
Yeah. Bicycle Lands, first of all, perfect name.
It's so perfect.
Cycling,
it works in
it is
every
perfect.
way.
It's absolutely it's
2 land types, 2 mana. It's a cycle of them, for God's sake.
Anything that makes Fluctuator jump in price makes me happy.
Splendid Reclamation was another one. That card from Shadows, where you could just cycle all your lands and be like, whoop, and then like a little weird scape shift and bring them all back. And...
Nice. That's awesome.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, these cards are super good. For similar reasons to Temples, I'll say. There's just half a card attached to each of these guys. Like, you don't necessarily have to have... You have your mana early, and then you can get half a card later. I think that these are going to be a staple of every archetype going forward.
So let's talk about a really interesting kind of enabler card. When I'm at work at Cool Stuff, there's all sorts of Magic players around all the time, lots of EDH players or lots of competitive players. And it was really interesting to me that a lot of the competitive players were like, man, I want to try Drakehaven. Drakehaven is a blue and 2 generic mana rare enchantment. Whenever you cycle or discard a card, you may pay 1 generic mana. If you do, you create a 2/2 blue Drake creature token with flying. So anytime you cycle, you pay a mana, you get a free Windrake. Anytime you're discarding your cards or discarding your hand, or maybe playing Collective Brutality, for example, you can pop on an extra mana there. Got yourself a Windrake. So there's lots of really cool, strange things. There is the blue creature from Shadows over Innistrad, who at the beginning of your upkeep, I'm telling you, this is fun. It's a blue and 3 generic mana, 3/3. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can discard your hand. If you do, you draw that many cards. So you just pay whatever generic amount your hand is, and you can just get that many drakes. I know it's silly. Honestly, it's probably never going to work. But
you're basically nibbling on my ear right now. I think it's fantastic.
It's amazing.
This is like playing Bearscape and Sylvan Library. Or wait, what was it? Words of Bears. The green words that made bear tokens. Very similar to that.
Right. So, Forgotten Creation. See, I forgot its name.
Yes.
Because it's the Forgotten Creation.
Because it's Forgotten Creation.
Is a rare from Shadows of Innistrad, and it has Skulk even. It's got some of that value stacked on there. You know what I'm saying?
That value, though.
Skulk value.
That's right. That 4 mana, that Hill Giant Skulk action at the beginning of your upkeep.
Skulking Hill Giant Windfall.
Yep. Yeah. But you don't get to just choose, like, I want to discard 2. Like, no, you got to discard all of them and then draw all of them. But still.
I actually lost a Windfall the other day in Vintage.
Wow.
Because he was drawing all of his cards, and I had dredged my brains out, and I had like 4 cards left, and he goes, Windfall? Oh, by the way, I have 9 cards in hand, and I'm like, I just lost a Windfall.
Yep.
Wow.
That'll happen.
So I think it's really interesting that Drakehaven also stacks in the right way. Like, if you have 2 Drakehavens, you discard a card, you pay 2 generic mana, you get 2 2/2s. So
perfect.
It's just one of those cards that it's really cool build around me. I don't know if it's ever going anywhere, but I love to point these types of cards out. Kefnet the Mindful is next. It is our blue god. It is a blue and 2 generic mana mythic legendary god. It has flying and indestructible. It is a 5/5, but it can't attack or block unless you have 7 or more cards in hand. But as all of these gods tend to do at this point, they have a special ability, an activated ability, that kind of helps you get there, kind of helps you turn them into the god that they sort of, are into, they should be. This one has a blue and 3 generic mana draw card, then you may return a land you control to its owner's hand, so you essentially go +2 to your hand size. And it doesn't take long, either activating that at the end of your opponent's turn or on your turn, in order for you to get 7 cards, and suddenly you have a flying indestructible monster that is, of course, undercosted. And the last time that Blue had a monster that was undercosted and needed a few sort of things to happen in the right way, it kind of took over a whole Pro Tour. So I'm not going to be like, this card is bad right away, because certainly it feels like this is what a control deck is wanting to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're able to play your removal spells, your wraths, and it doesn't die.
Yeah.
And that is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting that, I mean, maybe it's just because there's not enough design space, but this is the Moonfolk ability.
Yeah. Wow. From
Hands to your hand.
Yeah.
Oh, you indeed.
Yeah. So I'd be interested to know if that is happenstance, or if perhaps Tamio has been here and talked with Kefnet about some things. It's probably happenstance. It's probably, Uyo Silent Prophet hasn't made any trips to Amonkhet, but it's just a thought.
Uyo Silent Prophet was awesome.
I loved Uyo.
If you don't know
Uyo
what we're talking
Silent
about,
Prophet.
Look that card up.
Oof.
It is fun times. All right, so we got to keep going. We got lots of spoilers. Let's talk a little bit about Gideon.
New hotness.
There was.
Who? I don't know who that is.
There was this
Mono
YouTube.
Gideon aggro.
I don't know her.
There was this YouTube video a few years ago by Adult Swim, and it was called Too Many Cooks. And if you haven't seen it, you gotta go see it. I'm not going to spoil it, but let me tell you that it's a theme song about having too many cooks, and let me tell you, we got too many Gideons. There are too many Gideons. We have Gideon of the Trials. It is a 2-white, 1 generic mana mythic planeswalker. It has 3 starting loyalty, so that's 3 mana for 3 starting loyalty. Okay, we're already off to a good start. +1 until your next turn. Prevent all damage from target permanent. Prevent all damage target permanent would deal.
Permanent.
That's pretty cool. Second ability is what I would describe as the standard Gideon ability. Turn him into a dude. Until end of for 0:, turn him into a 4/4 human soldier creature with indestructible that's still a planeswalker. You need to prevent all damage to him. This is pretty standard Gideon stuff.
Classic Gideons.
Yeah.
Joining in the fray.
And here comes this last ability.
The best part.
So when somebody showed it to me, they kind of covered up that last part. They're like, "What do you think?" I'm like, "That's neat." And they showed. I was like, "What?
What in the world?"
0:, you get an emblem with as long as you control a Gideon Planeswalker, you can't lose the game, and your opponents can't win the game. It's Platinum Angel on Gideon that starts with 3 loyalty, that goes up to 4 and prevents damage, that just so happens to, maybe preface the best white card in Standard Not Close, which is his sort of bigger self. Ally of Zendikar. Ally of Zendikar has already been everywhere all the time in every freaking deck list in a top 8 from Standard from now since, God, it was printed.
Oh, it sees play in all the formats, literally. Yeah. I've seen it in Legacy, I've seen it in Vintage, I've seen it in Modern. It's pesky.
It's amazing, and it's just one of the best Planeswalkers.
Oh, by the way, there's a 5 mana Gideon legal in Standard too. Once the Planeswalker decks come out.
That's right, the Martial Paragon. So you have this kind of chain of Gideons, and now this. All right, so let's back up. Wizards had planned on making Standard shorter, on having faster rotations. There was not supposed to be Battle for Zendikar and Oath of the Gatewatch in this Standard. They were not supposed to be there. When they were developing and looking at the cards and the decks and the interactions and blah, 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 and the crazy combos and what could go wrong, they did not in any way think that Battle for Zendikar was going to be in this Standard environment. And here we are with a Gideon that enables the other Gideon. As if it needed an enabler. As if we really were like, man, if only that Gideon could be just, if you could just make it playable. Maybe if you could make the Platinum Angel for it, then it would be playable and okay.
Jesus.
I don't understand. I don't think this Gideon is, amazing. I just think it's just, it's weirdly unnecessary because of what they did basically a year ago when they kind of rolled back the idea of having a shorter Standard. And this is kind of the fallout from it, is that we're getting this weird 3 Gideon Standard.
Right.
Aaron, where are you at on the Gideons?
So when I first saw this one, the thing that I immediately locked onto was the emblem part. And in my mind, immediately thought of Ad Nauseam, where it was like, you can't lose the game. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, that's relevant to my interests. And I was like, I would totally find a way to use this. And likewise, it also makes tech against the deck. I've seen Legacy players say, is this storm tech? Is this anti-storm tech? Where if you're playing Gideon, you can't kill me. Like, how do you plan on winning? Dredge. I know Vintage, they were talking about it in the mana drain of like Black Lotus turn 1. Turn 1 Gideon of the Trials. Pass.
Oh my god!
Legacy Vintage Dredge has literally no answers to this. If you Black Lotus us on turn 1, it's GG. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much I bizarre my brains out. If I don't have Ashen Rider or whatever that Angel is, Angel of Despair, I can't win the game. Like, this game in Eternal formats is frightening.
That is great.
It's so good. I'm really.
Do you want to see this on turn 1?
I'm so excited.
No.
And this is what happens whenever they bring a 3-mana Planeswalker, particularly a monocolor. You got that. Well, if you Black Lotus it and Vintage, could they possibly beat that like ever?
Monastery Mentor. Nobody touched it in Modern. Is Standard a little bit. Have you ever faced a turn 1 Monastery Mentor? Ooh. It's not fun.
Oh my god. That's insane. The fact is, it could be in Legacy. It could be a sideboard option in Legacy. That is amazing. Yeah. That is absolutely amazing. I love this card even more than I thought I did. It's beautiful. Speaking of older formats, I wanted to touch on a reprint and also a rarity bump for Aven Mindcensor. Aven Mindcensor is in Amonkhet, which is pretty cool. Beautiful. I think he or she fits, the bird person, fits right in. It is a bird wizard after all. Yes. White and 2 generic mana for a 2/1 rare bird wizard that has flash and flying, and if an opponent would search a library, that's any library, that player searches the top 4 cards of that library instead. So if you didn't get a chance to play with this thing, it's obviously super good and limited. It's basically a flash Windrake, which is great. But in Standard, it saw plenty of play back in the day, and of course it's hanging out still in Modern these days. And it, for an uncommon, I think it reached somewhere in the $15 to $20 range at some point.
I paid $12 for mine,
Yeah.
Wow.
Future Sight, man. Which, by the way, this is a future shifted card, so we've caught up in time.
And unpopular opinion. I have an unpopular opinion. The original Aven Mindcensor was kind of thug.
Even though it's a Rebecca Gay art, you didn't like the owl person.
Well, it was just.
Look,
Bird Person. Very Marmaduke-y.
Bird Person is now Phoenix Person. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with Rick and Morty, but if you haven't, you get on that. Okay.
Got it.
All right.
Bring back that Szechuan sauce.
Is that why everybody's talking about Szechuan sauce?
Yes, that's why everyone's talking about the Mulan.
I couldn't figure it out
Szechuan
why
sauce.
my feed was full of that. I was like, what brought this on?
Basically, Rick's goal now is to get Szechuan sauce from the 1998 Mulan release. McDonald's. At McDonald's, they had a special dipping sauce, Szechuan, and they got rid of it after the movie went away. And so now all he wants is Szechuan sauce. So now the smartest person in not only the universe but in all of the universes, all he wants to do is go back in time and get McDonald's Szechuan dipping sauce. In any case, let's get back to spoilers. All right, here we go. Sorry, we had a. All right.
Yeah.
As Foretold was released this afternoon, it's a mythic. It's a blue and 2 generic mana mythic enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you put a time counter on it. Once each turn, that's each turn, okay?
Each turn.
Every single turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a spell you cast with converted mana cost X or less, where X is the number of time counters on As Foretold. Let's make sure you understand what's happening here.
I have lots of questions.
X or less. Now, I have heard from many people at this point different sides of the coin as to whether I can play Ancestral Visions the turn I play As Foretold. Now, I've heard it yes, and I've heard it no, and I don't even really understand at this point.
Yeah, are we bound by like instant sorcery rules, or can you just play things like creatures? Like,
wait, now that I recall here, I saw the tweet earlier from Mr. Tabak, from Matt Tabak, the rules manager, who said that you can play Ancestral Visions off this card immediately. Now, you know what? I don't even want Ancestral Visions. You know what I want? Restore Balance.
I know what I want. Yeah, I want Restore Balance.
I want immediately Restore Balance on turn 3. Or turn 1 if I can get there.
Bless your heart.
Yeah, this lets you Restore Balance. This also lets you Living End, and it lets you Cascade from your hand, basically, with your Simian Spirit Guides and stuff. So you can go like land, turn 2 land, Simian Spirit Guide, as Foretold, and then do whatever it is you're going to do with Restore Balance or cycling for your Living End or whatever. That's in older formats. In Standard, you actually, and as you mentioned, it's every turn.
Every turn.
You get to tap out turn 5 with your 2-mana counterspell. Yep. You get to tap out turn 6 with your 3-mana counterspell. So that is a huge deal. So you get to play tap out control and still have counterspell backup.
God, this card is just... Look, it might be bad, okay? Look, here's the negatives. The negatives is it comes out arguably on turn 3 and doesn't do anything. If you don't have a certain card in hand, or it takes a turn or two to get going, it may not affect the board for a while. Okay. Other side of this is that it's every turn, every single turn. If you're in multiplayer, think about it, EDH players, this card is really awesome. But in control type mirrors, you want to be able to tap out and play a threat and be able to, on their turn, have mana to spend that you didn't have to put anything into. I mean, once this thing gets up to 5, 6 counters, it really doesn't matter. At that point, literally every spell in your deck is free. That's fantastic. That's my favorite cost.
Also, the name the name as Foretold is really nice.
Yeah.
They did a really good job with the naming conventions in this set, and as Foretold is right there on the top of the list.
God, this card, I mean, again, I love, well, first of all, I mean, who doesn't love dangerous cards, right? Because they're exciting. Now, if they're broken, then we get all upset about it. But if they're just like that super cool, oh my god, but don't quite get there, I think that's where Wizards, that's the kind of the sweet spot for me. Yahenni's Expertise, for example, look dangerous, could even look broken in some way, ended up being okay.
Well, it's about to become less dangerous.
It's also about to be less dangerous, yeah.
Fair enough. So let's keep moving here. Cast Out is a white and 3 generic mana uncommon enchantment, okay? And you've heard this ability before, but however, this one has Flash. When Cast Out enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until Cast Out leaves the battlefield. However, this one has cycling for a 1 white. So, when this thing was spoiled, first of all, Oblivion Ring. Basically, Oblivion Ring with Flash. That's awesome. This card is great. It is easily first pickable and limited, and it's probably going to be amazing and constructed.
Deals with Gideon.
Here's my problem. Why does it have cycling? Who want, yeah, we have some things that enable cyclers. That's great. But you want to get rid of your Oblivion Ring type effect to do some of that? Maybe.
Delirium.
When you're in that, first of all, Delirium, and second of all, if I'm just mana screwed real hard and just can't find that second or third land that I need no matter what, you can go in. But it's weird because Mark Rosewater wrote a whole article on about design mistakes. And if you Google up expunge, cycle, mistake, you'll find it. Because he was talking about expunge, which is, again, an Urza Saga card, and it destroyed target non-black, non-artifact creature. It was basically terror for another mana, and it had cycling. And he was like, this card is a bad design because you just never cycle it. And I'm like, okay, what changed, right? Really? I mean, this is the part where, are we repeating history here, where we're putting, cycling on a really, really good card?
I mean, we are, but first of all, it's 4 mana, right? So you need to, if you're gonna reprint Oblivion Ring at 4 mana, you need to do something. And also, like I said, Delirium is still a thing. So being able to get an enchantment in the graveyard is a big deal. And finally, Cast Me Outside. How about that?
Whoa!
A plus.
Oh my god!
I need to bury that.
Oh my god.
Figure out a way to hide it.
Hashtag Cast Me Outside. Oh my god.
I just want to pair this with Starfield and Nyx and just cycle it and be like, whoop. But that's where
there you go. There's another application, Starfield.
Cast me out of the graveyard. How about that?
I love just the talk to the hand graphic of just oof, and just that's cool.
It's very good. All right, so let's talk about one of the best mana dorks, enablers, monsters. God, this card is so good. Channeler Initiate is a green and a generic mana for a rare 3/4 human druid. So that's 2 mana 3/4. Of course, they kind of put a little drawback, quote unquote drawback. When Channeler Initiate enters the battlefield, you put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature you control. Tap, remove a -1/-1 counter from Channeler Initiate, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So This card comes out early and pushes all of your stuff, and kind of moves your mana curve up one step. It has a lot of synergy with other cards that are already in the set that give -1/-1 counters, for example, because it lets this creature make more mana. And ultimately, if you wanted to kill off like a dorky little creature that you have and play a 2-mana 3/4, it gives you that option as well. So, Ruben, you were particularly high on this one, so tell us what you think about it.
This is the best 2-mana dork I think that's ever been printed since like Devoted Druid, and that's because Devoted Druid is able to tap for 2 mana and let you play 5 drops on turn 3.
Right.
This card is ludicrous. Like, you can go 1 drop and then just play Channeler Initiate as a Tarmogoyf, or you can ramp into any Planeswalker. Like, this card is ludicrously powerful.
Wow.
And all of the -1/-1. That's not even mentioning any of the -1/-1 counter interactions like Nest of Scarabs or any of the other things that are in the block. I think that this card is insanely good.
Card is super duper sweet.
Actually, it kind of seems almost black in its flavor. The idea of like almost hurting yourself, the creature, coming in, in looking at it from a flavor perspective of the creature almost hurting themselves in order to make mana, and then eventually getting stronger as they. Maybe I'm thinking about it too deep, but I love the flavor of this. I think it's great design. I think the mechanics are great. I love everything about this.
This card is super duper good, and it's one of those cards that I think we'll probably have to, kind of convince a lot of people by watching it work. Like, this is a card, when you see this thing work, I've seen cards like this work, and it's always just like, oh my god, there's so many cool things and interactions and ways you can work it and use it and blah, blah, blah. This card is fantastic. Speaking of a card that kind of baffles me, for a red and 2 generic mana, there's this guy named Combat Celebrant. And it's a mythic. It's a 4/1. So let's back this up. It's a 4/1 for 3 mana that's mythic. So this ability better be good. If Combat Celebrant has not been exerted this turn, you may exert it as it attacks. And when you do, you untap all other creatures you control. And after this phase, there's an additional combat phase. An exerted creature doesn't untap during your next untap step. People are kind of going a little nuts with this on Kiki-Jiki because...
Oh, God, no.
It does go infinite with Kiki-Jiki.
Right, so it goes infinite in that regard, which is kind of cool. In that sort of, yet another creature to go infinite with Kiki-Jiki with. Okay, fine.
In a slightly different way,
right.
I would add.
And more of an aggro-ish kind of come and get you. 4/1's a lot.
Yeah.
But 4/1 in and of itself, by making it as low a toughness as they could, they make it as fragile as they could. Because Wizards has clearly... And you can go back. If you search for this ability over time, it used to be super expensive and rare, and they wouldn't really want to do it, and Relentless Assault from back in the day. And Relentless Assault, then it kind of got more expensive, and then it kind of went less expensive, and then it was on Godo for a while.
Aggravated Assault?
Yeah, they've put this on all sorts of, sort of abilities and ways and cards, and finally they're like, fine, we'll give it to you for 3 mana. Can you bust it at 3 mana?
Right.
Because we may just see this ability at 2 mana if this thing does nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, they just stapled it onto a Craven Giant. Like,
it's weird.
You just hope for the best, I guess. I mean, I don't know. It's tough for me to predict what this card will do because we've never seen this effect so cheap. But 4/1 is very fragile. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, of course, and if it works in a world with Kiki-Jiki, that's great. There's
right.
nothing
And it
wrong
is a
with that.
mono red combo with Kiki-Jiki, which is kind of cool.
Right. So I have one last set of cards here, and we actually didn't get these in the Google Docs, so you guys haven't seen these yet. However, so let's first talk about Prowling Serpopard. Serpopard, and as far as I can tell,
Cat snakes.
That's a real thing.
Serpopard. Yeah.
Serpopards are cat snakes.
Sure.
It's a 2 green and 1 generic mana, 4/3 rare cat snake. Prowling Serpopard can't be countered, and creature spells you control can't be countered, of course, while you control it. It's interesting to me, particularly the sort of the pro reaction of this was fascinating because, by and large, I think the pros were like, this card is bad. It looks good, it sounds good, it sounds really interesting, but it's kind of terrible because its stats are not very good. It only is good if you have a bunch of other things that you're casting, and if you're casting a bunch of other things and they have sweepers, then this card is bad.
Well, it also seems odd that there's such a push, like, the This card revolves around the concept of things not being able to be countered, but the counter spells in Standard aren't great to begin with. And so a lot of the feedback that I saw was, if you're giving us this card, does that mean you're also giving us counters that we're going to want to play?
Right.
So that we're countering, we can't counter things? Like, you know, what are we countering? Who's countering anything in this format? People are winning games with Torrential Gear Hulk and Harness Lightning for disgusting amounts.
Right.
No one's countering anything. Like, what are you talking about?
It's weird. And then today, there was a fake rumor that Miscalculation was coming back, and everyone was just losing their minds.
I would love it if that card came back.
It'd be so insane. They haven't done Mana Leak in going on 5+ years.
But they gave us Essence Scatter.
They did give us Essence Scatter.
Okay.
When half the creatures have Embalm, it's like irrelevant.
Or everyone's playing Planeswalkers, so whatever.
Right, exactly.
There you go.
I was just going to say, you know what else says that spells can't be countered? Gideon. Because Gideon means no one can play counter spells.
Pretty much. Can't do it because you'll just lose.
Yeah.
So that's a card. That's a thing. So let's keep going here. The next card I want to talk about really quick was Tamet, Vizier of Nactamun. Nactamun?
Good job, yeah.
Ooh, Nactamun. Okay. A blue and a white for a 2/2. So it's a 2-mana bear. It's a rare legendary human cleric. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature token you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn and cannot be blocked this turn. But it has Embalm for a blue, a white, and 3 generic mana to make a copy of itself. And at that point, it itself can give itself +1/+1, and then you have basically a 3/3 unblockable. So this card, all the synergies with the token creatures that are going on in this set, all the white token creatures in particular, the white zombie creature tokens, I think this card is really cool. If nothing else, I love watching Commander players kind of go nuts, and man, they were going nuts over this thing.
Oh yeah.
It was a super, super cool idea, I think, to let white-blue kind of have this token strategy, and this is just the type of Commander you're able to play early and really take advantage of it.
I was surprised to read the story that came out today. He's like a teenager. Like when I first saw this, I thought he was like a guy in his middle age. You know, he's seen some things. No, he's like 16 and he's like flirting with Liliana. Like,
whoa,
it's fantastic. Yeah, yeah.
Hey man, go get it, kid.
Wow, go get him, killer. Go do your thing.
Tamet, Vizier of Nactamun. Yeah, that is a
Vizier of Nactamun.
Vizier.
And fair
and
enough.
his mummy looks dope too.
So,
is there a token of him?
There sure is.
Nice.
Yeah, Mythic Spoiler, no shade, has not always been posting the tokens. Like I know when I posted my spoiler for Sacred Cat, they still didn't post the Sacred Cat token. So yeah, the token was revealed in the, I think in the post. But yeah, it was out and it's gorgeous.
Absolutely. So the last card I want to talk about is, in terms of each individual spoiler, is Trial of Ambition. It is a black and a generic mana for an uncommon enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent sacrifices a creature, so it is instantly already what we would describe as a diabolic edict. An edict, a cruel edict, however you want to kind of look at it. Yep. The edict effects basically say your opponent sacrifices a guy. So so the second part of this card says when a cartouche, and there's your word, there's your vocab word for the day, ladies and gentlemen. Cartouche. Enters the battlefield under your control, you return it to its owner's hand. So there's some really interesting cartouche, not to be a card douche about it, but you know, I think that maybe some of the cartouches could actually see play because of a card that has this high of a power level when you use them.
I don't know if I can keep up with the Cartouchians, but I do like the idea of it's an interesting space. Like I've been reading over all the cartouches and all the trials, and there are some that stand out to me as being you love it. There are some that seem like a little more obvious to me, and then there are others that I just can't see working whatsoever. But I obviously have a weak spot for the black one. Go on.
Go on, Ruben.
I can't.
We can't. All right, we're good. We're good.
All of the trials are really good, by the way. Every single one of them. The cartouches, I mean, they're medium. In terms of the best cartouche trial combo, if you're going to try to play them in Standard, it's probably the green combo, Trial of Strength, Cartouche of Strength, because you get the fight effect in addition to getting the 4/2 Beast, getting a fight effect, getting a 4/2 Beast back to back to back to back. The most powerful single card is Cruel Edict, Trial of Ambition.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not really close. Sift is nice. Deal 3 damage for 3 mana is nice, but boy, Cruel Edict is a good card.
Yeah, and deal 3 damage could very well be like if you had the deal 3 damage trial or this trial, and limited, pick one, pack one.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could turn down the red burn spell.
In limited, it's a lot different because all your creatures are 3/3s, right? So the Edict is a lot less attractive in a limited environment, whereas in standard, you want the Edict because your opponents have things like Ulamogs and Shroud creatures.
Mm-hmm. Well, Felidar Guardian is the best cartouche, as our wonderful chat room has informed us. So, and I can't necessarily disagree with him, to be honest. So let's move on here to Gathering the Townsfolk. Now this week, Wizards actually announced a rules change. They got all these weird new split cards. It's time for a weird new split rule card ruling thing. Yep. And I'll bring it up here on the screen. So Amonkhet split card rules changes. Basically, here's the gist. All right. Weird split cards. Split cards in the past have had a bunch of random converted mana costs based on what in the world is happening. Whether you're targeting them in the graveyard, whether Dark Confidant's showing them to you, whether you're transmuting to go find one, whatever. Here's the thing. Nowadays, it's 6 converted mana cost unless you're casting the spell. So if one is 2 and one is 2 mana and one is 4 mana like Destined to Lead, it's a 6 converted mana cost spell. That's it. If you're casting Destined, it's a 2 mana spell. If you're casting Lead, it's a 4 mana spell. Otherwise, always a 6 converted mana cost, period. Now, this kind of breaks popular modern decks that have been using Boom Bust and Goblin Dark Dwellers.
My friend Daniela was
or Brain in a Jar.
She's been running a blue deck called Bird Flu, and it's been like blue white with. It's been winning a lot too. It has like Srom's expertise and like beckon calls and detention spheres and supreme vert. She's just been doing ludicrously well with it, and she was furious about this. She was like, "I'm tired of catering to people who don't know the rules," and I was like, "Daniela, please!" Like she was as upset as I was when Golgari Gravetroll was banned, and she was furious.
Yeah.
Yeah, Beck & Call and Boom and Bust and all those split cards that, because they had a really cheap option, are now not very good anymore because now all their converted mana costs are stupid high.
Wear and Tear, the legacy players were talking about counterbalance and how they used to use Wear and Miracles would board into Wear and Tear, and then that would let them counter cheaper things, and now it just costs 3. And the good news is, though, if you are using it for purposes of like Chalice of the Void, I know Dredge was using Wear and Tear in the sideboard to get around Chalice on 1 because technically it's 3, and for that I've been told it's still 3 and you can still get around Chalice for those reasons, so that's cool.
If you have 2 targets. Yeah,
absolutely. So it's really interesting how again it kind of destroyed decks, but when you kind of had to awkwardly say, well, it has a different converted mana cost here versus there versus here, 3 different places it kind of had a different cost, and that's just a little weird, to be honest.
I acknowledge them doing this, though. We've talked a little bit about Hearthstone specifically, how they can kind of like errata cards, and we've had discussions about if only Magic could do that, if only Wizards could do that, and so I really appreciate them kind of coming forward and saying, we didn't intend for this to happen. Like, this has been something we have kind of swept under the rug whenever the topic has come up, and we didn't think it would be a big deal, and I appreciate them finally having the option to do this and taking it.
Right.
Yeah, this is just a streamlining that only makes sense. Like I said earlier, I feel really like a big man when I outsmart people based on my rules knowledge, and when I call a judge over and say, "Hey, judge, explain to this idiot how this rule works," and then they go, "All right, here's how this rule works," a new person, and then they feel bad. This just streamlines everything and makes Magic a more enjoyable experience for everybody. No downside at all, other than my Brain in the Jar combo decks don't work anymore, sadly.
Dang.
But that breaking and entering deck not gonna be a thing anymore. But it's still this is just a great rule change. I see no downsides at all, really.
Like, I mean, I clearly remember when I came back to Magic. Like, there was that awkward explanation of here's how damage on the stack works, and I was like, it's gonna die, but it's gonna hurt the thing, but it's dead.
Yeah,
stupid stuff like that. I'm glad it goes away. Yes, it might kill some decks, but it is worth it in the long run. I think this was a correct choice. So, Aaron, tell us a little bit about this article on Kotaku, with the title of "Magic the Gathering's head designer has a damn hard job."
Well, I really think Ruben's the one to kind of like help me out with this. I mean, You cannot be surprised. This is what you're here for. This is what they come for. Like,
she
come
set
on.
you up so hard.
Is secretly, well, not really.
And he can't do it again.
No, designer Mark Rosewater told me.
Oh, it's breaking
Did it go
up.
away? It's because I went full Rosewater is why it broke up.
Wow. Can you give us just one more try?
Assuming Reno, Nevada will let us do it, and then I'll give it one more shot. All right. The first line of the first sentence of the article goes, Magic is secretly, it's not one game, head Magic the Gathering designer Mark Rosewater told me. It's actually a bunch of different games that have a shared rule system. Every time I make a card set, I'm making the game for everybody. But for each person, it's a different game for them.
Yes. Yeah, so it's basically an interview with Morrow. You did great, though. You took one for the team. So yeah, this is an interview with Morrow done by a young man named J.R. Goldberg, who some of us know from the Magic community, and he got this amazing opportunity to interview Morrow. And Morrow just kind of gives people a glimpse into, what has led to the longevity of the game, the success of the game. He talks a little bit about Richard Garfield and what Richard's vision was, and how Magic has, continued to honor that and in some ways strayed from it. And, there was one part in particular that I really, really enjoyed about this, and he was kind of comparing Magic to movies in the sense that he was saying, let me just find a little blip here. Where did it go? Quick. Okay. So he was talking about here, he says, we went from gaming as a thing that some people do to gaming as a thing that just people do. And the way that I talk about it is movies went from a procedure where early in a movie's life, certain people would go to the movies, but that was like if you were a movie enthusiast. And I kind of like that. Like, I like how he talks about how a lot of people who are playing Magic nowadays don't consider themselves gamers. And we've kind of seen that on other levels too, where, when Farmville was really big, there were so many people playing Farmville, but if you ask them, are you a gamer? Are you a geek? Are you a nerd? They would say no. And I really like the way that he acknowledged that a lot of people who play Magic nowadays just don't think of themselves as such, where the audience before used to be, that sort of niche audience. And I really like that he mentioned how games have sort of transcended, boxes and labels and things like that, and that they're designing the game with those folks in mind. I thought that was really cool.
Absolutely. So it's great to see any sort of press on what I would describe as a sort of mainstream gaming website about Magic. Yeah. And I don't think it really sort of told anything that we didn't know already, because, we're hip deep into this, butt deep, if you will. # butt deep. Sometimes I'm
always fascinated to see interviews from an outside perspective about Magic, because we're butt deep in this, right? But to get the out of the butt perspective, it gives us a whole different viewpoint when you're outside the butt and not inside the
right.
butt deep.
When you're butt deep,
for example,
it's everywhere.
I didn't know that we have a couple of big anniversaries in Magic this year, but in October will be here at Wizards of the Coast for his 22nd year.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot of years at the helm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's not been at the helm the whole time, but he'll have been in Magic the Gathering for 22 years. So, that's a pretty big deal. And so you get different perspectives on things, and you get to see different factoids, and what's important to the outside world as opposed to the in-butt world of Magic the Gathering, which I thought was super. It's always fun to see that kind of perspective.
It's amazing that Mark Rosewater has a career that basically expands almost a lifetime of Magic. Mm-hmm. There is going to be a day where, it is inevitable that you can't do something forever. And I'm really excited, and I'm just at this point, I'm just savoring everything that we're able to get out of the current R&D team. I honestly feel this is going to be looked upon as one of the golden eras of Magic. The people who are involved, Rosewater, Forsyth, Eric Lauer, Dave Humphreys, all those guys who are kind of sort of steering the ship a little bit. Yeah, we get mad, we get upset over things. Yeah, they banned some stuff and it got weird. But overall, I think their ups have really outshined their downs.
Well, someday soon, Magic is going to be approaching something that all sports do, which is their first generation will be no more. We're already past it, but we still have some of the old pros. We still have, John Finkel is at Pro Tour 1, but there will come a day where it will be entirely new people. Baseball had to do it in the 1920s. Football had to deal with it in the 1960s or 70s. And Magic is going to have to deal with it as well, in which not the new generation, but the second generation will entirely take over from the first. And that day is going to come sooner rather than later. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Absolutely.
Big step down.
All right. So I have selected a winner as we're going to turn our corner here to the finisher.
Ooh.
The winner of the Hazoret, the Fervent Invocation version, is... I guess, could I use the full name? Am I supposed to do that? I'm not trying to... this is where I'm kind of getting weird in terms of the live giveaways. Let's just say Mr. Adam D., who has an email address at yahoo.com.
Yay!
Yay! I will email you after the show. Feel free, if you're on chat right now, to private message me, and we'll make that stuff happen. But we have the winner chosen. Congratulations, entry number 196 for those keeping track at home. But
awesome.
That said, it's awesome, I think, to give away things live rather than a couple days from now. So I'm still happy.
I have a question about that. So are these all real names, or are these some usernames? Because I'm worried that we're going to get some really embarrassing username and you're going to have to read it.
I mean, I've always had real names so far. Now, I think Gleam.io is some really cool sort of contest software to give away stuff. Okay. And, as far as I know, we're okay. That said, as we do turn the corner to our finisher, this week, New York City FC, what does that stand for, Ruben?
Football Club.
Football Club, thank you. Signed FIFA pro Christopher Hawley to a contract as the first esports star signed to a Major League Soccer club. Now, this is, of course, a soccer club signing a soccer star of the digital athletic variety, but it does open the door for future partnerships, perhaps partnerships with Magic. So who would you like to see make the leap from cardboard to a traditional sports franchise, Ruben?
Well, the next team that I'd like to see make the jump, I'm looking forward to it's the easiest connection in Major League Soccer. I'm waiting for it to come to fruition after Hasbro signs a long-term deal with Major League Soccer's Kansas City Wizards.
Wow. A little on the nose on that one.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little nosy. Aaron?
Yeah.
Well, if it's good enough for pro sports and it's good enough for college sports, and when you think college basketball, you think Duke University... So obviously the best fit is Christian Calcano.
Yeah. The calculator, the volcano, Calcano.
Wow. So obviously the best connection would be to sign us, this very podcast, to a deal with the National Basketball Association and the Orlando Magic Mikes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, the Orlando Magic Mikes, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Oh my God. And that ends another episode of the Orlando Magic Mikes.
Sounds great. It rolls right off the tongue.
It really does.
I want to thank you for joining us here to discuss all things Magic. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, and of course my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Ruben, thanks for hanging out.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. And thanks for you guys for watching. We're going to go to our final slide. So that ends another episode of Magic Mikes. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmikes. Visit our website at magicmikespodcast.com. Thanks to our Patreon supporters. Or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe. Do all the things social that tell people that we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv/magicmikes. On Twitter at magicmikescast. On Reddit at reddit.com/r/magicmikes. And on Facebook at facebook.com/magicmikes. Talk to us privately at magicmikespodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmikespodcast.libsyn.com. Or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.